Like Lewis said, my name is Zach Reynolds. I work for Southern Ag Consulting Company out of Mississippi. So we have about 15 consultants. We're getting a couple new ones, so 15 right now. I work with all the consultants more on the data management side, all the soil sampling, any precision ag work, data management, seeding prescriptions, fertility prescriptions, yield analysis. I deal on that side of the business. And this year, they got a drone before I came on. Started working with them about a year ago, and they got a drone towards the end of planting season, and we were really kind of racking our brains as a consulting group, how we could benefit from using a drone. We've heard, all the preconceived notions of what you can and can't do, and so we were talked to the consultants, kind of see what they thought about, practical uses for them, and so throughout the season we're looking for any opportunities. All the data you're going to see here today, a lot of it's kind of basic things that we just kind of picked up on throughout the year. To start off, the program we used was DataMapper Precision Flight. I had never flown a drone before. This past year, I'm not an expert by any means, still learning, learned a lot, but this is the program we use. You put the app on your phone, it connects to the drone, you pull it up, you draw a boundary around the field, and it shows you your flight path, you set your altitude, your direction you want it to fly. And one of the biggest challenges was, the lower it is, the more you can see. The higher it is, the more you can get across. And so kind of the drone that we had was the multi-rotor, the quad looking drone, the one that you see a lot on TV. We used a Matrice 100. It's a pretty good sized drone. So you put it up in the air about 20 to 25 minutes, and when you put it up and it's doing this, it's flying itself. You push a button and it goes up, and you're watching it on your iPad and watching it in the sky, and it's taking pictures as it's going. You got to set an overlap. So the more overlap you have, the better picture you have, but also the more overlap you have, the less you can get done. So those are kind of the pros and cons of using the drone. So one of the things when we polled the consultants, a lot of people thought drainage issues, we'll be able to pick those up. From the ground you can tell when you have a bad drainage spot, but how big of an area is it really affecting, and does it translate to yield enough to try to do something about it if you could? So northeast Mississippi, we found a field, a guy, this perfect situation he'd been talking about. He had a couple of fields there that had some holes in it. He'd been talking about doing dirt work for a few years. Didn't know if it was going to be worth the money. He just started recording his yield. So this top picture is the NDVI image from the drone, and you can see it's got the halos, kind of honeycombed, because I was running to like 70% overlap, and I increased it throughout the year, but it still gave me a good idea of where those bad drainage spots were, and those holes right there that are white, you could see from the ground. There was no plants there, but when I showed the grower that picture mid-season, that was identified by the consultant as a drainage problem. Otherwise, you wouldn't really know. If you just saw that picture, you wouldn't know what the cause was. And so, but he didn't realize how big of an area it was really affecting. And so I processed this through DataMapper. This image here, I put it into SMS, and they have a vigor rating system. Basically, it's taking all those. You can set parameters on the colors, for lack of a better term, in the NDVI image. And I ran a yield analysis on this middle part here where the worst drainage was, or most affected. And I was a little bit surprised the yield map didn't exactly match up with that spot, but right here you can see it was about 30-40 acres, and it yielded 4 to 5 bushels less than the rest of the field. It says higher acreage. It picked up around the edge, but there was nothing there. But about 30 to 40 acres yielded 4 to 5 bushels less than the rest of his field. And that was just, like I said, this was just kind of a learning experience, and it kind of opened his eyes a little bit, because from the ground, he didn't think he, definitely wouldn't have thought it was 30 to 40 acres that would have showed up in yield or on the aerial imagery. So this was a pretty good example to show, we present him with the data, and whatever, if he thinks it's worth spending the money to fix it, then, that's his decision. This was an example with all the drift and volatility issues with dicamba. Found Mississippi State had a couple of research trials, and the one on the left is a volatility study. So there's 2 rows, all these are soybeans planted. These are different treatments, and I don't know which treatments are which. Some are untreated, but the way it was done is they applied a flat of soil with dicamba and put it under a tent on these rows to see if it volatilized off the soil that was applied and affected the plants. And as you can see, it picked it up. You could tell where those flats were at, and some was worse than others, and then you had a few untreated checks. But I think the biggest reason we were able to see it is because all the plants are real small, and all the red you see there is the ground showing through. And when the plants get larger, from what I saw, it was a lot harder than you would think to pick up even the ortho image. This is an NDVI image, but even the ortho image on 5 to 10 on getting close to 15% damage, which looks bad, and it's hard to pick up on unless you're flying, right on top of the canopy, and then you won't be able to fly a whole lot of acres. And this is another example. This was drift. You can kind of see the plume. These were where the dicamba was applied with some hand booms, and the wind blowing from west to east, and you kind of see the plume where it stopped. Well, right in here, again, it's fairly small plants. You kind of start seeing the ground through there. But over here, even you walked out there, it looked bad, and you really couldn't pick it up on the imagery. So I say all that to say, you would think you put it up, you could notice it really well, but that wasn't my experience with it. I just put this slide in here to show we also do some small plot research, and I flew all the small plots this year. You can see we got this is a herbicide trial. We had treated rows with untreated checks running beside them, and this was another thing that consultants, said they thought might be applicable for them was, if they had one riding around their truck, you're looking at burn down. It's not going to tell you what weeds you got, but you can identify the weeds. You could throw it up, kind of see what kind of pressure you're looking at, things like that. Also, mid-season, you had weed escapes, looking at pigweed or something blowing out through the top of a crop somewhere. Another one of the big talks, people say, using drones for was defoliating cotton, desiccating soybeans, using picks and cotton. So we had a defoliation trial in East Mississippi, and our trial is kind of hard to see, but it ran right here. It went all the way down the field, and so this is the ortho image. It's kind of dark. It wasn't cloudy. I just had the camera set wrong, but you can see our untreateds in here, or different treatments, and it picked it up pretty well. And you can see here where you had a lot more leaves still stuck, and it showed up real well in here. A lot more white, lack of better terms, no biomass, so it showed red. So if you had the capability, like I've been talking in some of these other talks, to variable rate your spray, you could do that with this image. You could take your NDVI image, pull it into SMS, depending on the capabilities of your sprayer, break this into however many zones and rates you want it to. This is another example of a drone picture that we used to make a prescription. We didn't actually apply this, but one of the consultants in Louisiana over on the Mississippi, on the levee, I had a field, it's not the whole field, I had some technical difficulties getting the whole field done, but there wasn't much surface over there. That was a problem getting it connected, but flew most of the field, and you can definitely see this vein running through here, and it was seep water, and the grower and the consultant talked about it, and they threw the idea around of maybe putting some ammonium sulfate out there. If it didn't get better, maybe try to kick it off. We didn't do that because we didn't see it being economical in that situation, but I took it anyway just to play with it. So I took this image, put it into SMS, and created some zones to where I could take that shape file and send it. I can't make one that fits a plane, but I could send it to somebody. For us, is Matt Peterson. We send it to him, he formats it and sends it to the plane, you know, just like we variable rate, in the fall fertility. You know, if you want to make an in-season application of a dry product, we could do that with this. This is in Mississippi Delta. The grower and the consultant had been seeing streaks in a few fields for a couple of years. It was about time for him to do, you know, he was on a 3-year rotation with his soil sampling. So we took that opportunity, we flew the field. We knew he was going to collect good yield data, and we knew we had to do the soil sampling. So this is the NDVI image from that field, and then the yield data, and this is the yield data plus the gridded samples that were going to be done regardless. And so what we did, I took this image and, you know, compared, overlaid it with this, and these areas where whatever problem this was, or we're thinking it was more of a textural problem, but it caught, I mean, it was like 40 bushels, and the rest of the field was in the 70s, you know, in these green and yellow spots. So it was really hurting him pretty bad, and he was wanting to make sure it wasn't a fertility issue. So we took the imagery and the yield data. You know, we took these samples when we did our, you know, scheduled soil sampling, and then we went back and did some directed samples in some of the bad and good areas, and used the imagery as another layer, you know, just to verify, you know, yeah, we flew it twice actually, you know, see where these strips were in the same place every time. So that was another way we were able to make a decision on doing some sort of directed diagnosis sampling. Future projects, one thing, the stand counts. It's a big talk about, you know, you could do the stand counts once you get from my experience this year, it kind of came in late to the planting season, but I wanted to see if, you know, if it was, as far, you can do it when they get a good size on them, and that's what DataMapper told me, like corn needed to be 6 or 8 inch leaf. But if you're wanting to try to make a decision on a replant, by then it's getting kind of late in cotton. They told me you had to have several true leaves on it because they have a program that you put it in and it'll count the leaf, you know, plants and stuff for you. So I flew a couple of fields, and I flew it like I was saying, you kind of got to figure out how much area you want to get and how high, and so I flew them at 100 feet, and it was cotton that was, it was pretty small. We were right on the verge of wondering if we wanted to replant or not. And when I flew it and run it through DataMapper, I couldn't see the plants at all. And so this next year, I think I'm going to manually fly, like, just if I have a field, just go down in some random spots, get real low, take a picture and pull it in SMS. It's got a ruler tool, and I can measure out a certain amount of, you know, distance on the screen and just count the plants that way instead of trying to do a autopilot flight. I think that'll help a lot, just trying to get as low as possible. And the irrigation, I'm not going to try to fly anything to try to say we need to trigger irrigation at any point. What I was thinking was, you know, we have some growers, and sometimes you can help it, sometimes you can't. But if you have a string-shaped field and you know you're wasting water on one end, backing it up the field, to see, one, if the drone can even pick it up, and two, how much of an area it's going to affect. You know, if you could see it in the NDVI image and say, you know, it's backing up X amount of acres, maybe we should try to implement a pipe planner or some sort of program like that. I'm not sure I'll even be able to pick it up, but I'm going to try it anyway. And that's all I got. I don't know. If y'all have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Did you ever crash one?
Yes, sir, I did.
On autopilot or how?
Yep. Yes, sir. So on when you have the autopilot thing here, so you push the button. You know, it's got the if you had it in here and you flew it up to that wall, it kind of. Well, autopilot don't do that. It'll fly straight into something. And so I set a grid and I pushed it, and on the remote it's got to go to home button. And it had two settings. So one setting was you push it, you got to swipe it on your iPad too. And I thought if I just pushed it, it was going to come back. So I pushed it and just kind of watched it, and it went the opposite way and hit a tree, ripped it all to pieces. So yeah, I'd been messing with it about 3 weeks, and it was put down for a while. So that was part of the reason my stand count experiments got cut short. So luckily it wasn't too bad though.
What were your red streaks through that field? Was that a soil issue with clay or something?
Well, if you look like just the bare, we had some bare soil, and you could see the streaks. So I don't know if it's some sort of, I think it's a textural issue or something. I don't think it's a soil fertility issue, because even that grid sample we had, the P and K levels there were just as high or higher than the good areas. So I don't think it's a fertility issue. We've got to go back. We're going to do the directed samples. We got the points laid, and it starts raining, so we're just going to do them when it dries up, and then do some comparison samples in that field. But we hadn't figured out for sure what it is, but I don't think it's soil fertility. He was thinking that it was, so that's kind of why we did the directed points.
Yeah, it makes me think someone found, I think it's here in Mississippi, where, you know, that they were finding those low yield areas had the highest fertility because it was a soil texture problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've been putting all that fertilizer out there, and there have been the crops hadn't been using it. So it kind of,
Yep.
you get these backward correlations that are weird. Yeah.
We've seen that happen a lot, especially a guy, if we've been trying to talk to him about variable rating is, fertilizer instead of straight rate, and you'll really see, you're stacking it in a place that's just a low yielding area. Your P and K levels will be out the roof, and it's cutting 40 bushels or something.
Right.
So.
Why did the pattern get set to go east and west whenever it's pretty long north and south?
It automatically throws a grid on there, and you can turn it. Yeah.
Can you tweak it?
Yeah, that rotate. You just hold, you push it, and you can turn it however you want.
So then you can go long strips instead of.
And that's what I do. I didn't fly it like this. I just did that in the room just to show a picture of it. But for me, I've noticed the battery lasts longer. I don't know if it's just in my head, but it seemed like it lasts longer when it didn't have to turn around as much. Because it gets to the end and it really, you can hear, and it's got to stop and start. It just has to turn around 3 times. It seems to last longer.
So the less turning, the better.
Yeah.
Just like a tractor.
Yeah, yeah. And the limitation with this for me right now definitely is batteries.
Yeah.
I mean,
20 minutes top.
I got 4 batteries. You put 2 in at a time, and you got 20 minutes total getting up and going. In this program, if you're standing right here, it's going to pick the furthest point away from you to start, so it finishes close. So it may ride for a couple minutes, and it burns a bunch of battery getting over there. And you might get right here, and you have to bring it back and switch the batteries.
So it's going to start over there. It's not even going to make a pass going over there.
No.
That's dumb.
It wants to get closer to you, so when the battery starts getting lower, it's closer to home, because where it took off is home.
Yeah.
So it says, I don't want to land in the middle of the field, and you have to go try to find it.
Yeah.
Of course, it tells you where it is on the app, but it always works back toward you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Does this one have where, when its battery gets a certain level, it comes home?
yes, sir. I think it was around 20%. It's beeped at, maybe it beeped at me at 20 and it came home at 15, I think is what it is, but it automatically comes back at a certain percent.
The technology is getting better at trying to make it safe for you, so you won't crash it.
Yeah.
And,
Once I did a few flights, it's pretty program like this, which I think they're all pretty similar, but it's pretty easy. I mean, once you get the hang of it.
so there's two ways you can do this. You can do a mapping mission like this, or you can just throw it up and look.
Yeah.
So I did the throw up and look, and then Zach did the mapping mission.
Now I'm probably do some throw up and looks like I talking about on the stand counts. That's why I'm gonna try to do it, because this wasn't working out for me.
One thing you didn't mention, the before you fly app, do y'all
Yeah.
use that?
Yeah, there's several, as far as safety in the FAA, there's a Before You Fly app, which is on your phone, and it can tell you where there's airspace restrictions. So if you're flying near a hospital with a heliport or an airport or something like that, it will tell you, you're within so many miles or to a restricted area. So it's very good to have. And I forgot how many restricted areas there are in the country, but it's thousands. Have you ever looked at a restricted area map? It's just covered in. I'm thinking, where's there any free space for me to fly? So again, knowing the airspace rules and knowing the airspace really helps you. So stay out of trouble.
Electrical grids, power lines.
Yeah, power lines, you can fly those. Yeah. We did some flights for Entergy. Hit there in the Delta. I forgot, it was like 50 miles we flew. So the university does not only ag, it does everything else. So power lines, habitat restoration. We do a lot of stuff, in Louisiana, down below New Orleans, doing the restoration habitat, trying to restore some of that marshland that's being eroded. Gulf of Mexico, we do a lot of flights. We do a lot of flights with weather. The weather sensors, everything's gotten so small. I mean, I used to be a sensor operator in an airplane back in the 2000s, and the sensor was bigger than this chair, and now it's this big, And so the weather sensors are the same on the pinky, the fingernail here, it's a full weather station. And so we instrument these aircraft, and we work with other departments on campus. So there's just so many applications. I think construction is the #1 use of drones today. Cut and fill is big. If you can give, and it's not survey grade, but if you can give a civil engineer a pretty good idea of cut and fill, how much dirt I got to remove, how much I need to bring in, I mean, it's huge.
Yeah.
Stockpile inventory. We have several steel mills around Starkville. They have these huge inventory piles, that they use for scrap metal. You can fly that in, 30 minutes. The software that's really changing. The processing software is getting so much better and faster. And it can give you a 3D volume, quickly. And so just whatever application it touches, it does make a difference.
So like for me, I have one, I technically have 3 between me and my brother. And so we literally haven't cracked it open.
Yeah. What kind is it?
What is the first thing? Well, I don't even know. I don't even know.
Is it a good one? Do you think it's
I think so.
Is it in a carrying case or what?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first thing you do is they come with apps. So everything is controlled through an app on your phone or an iPad.
Well,
It's like the DJI app or
do I
something
need to
like
go to the
that.
website first and get a certification and
Well,
then
it would-
crack it open? Or
You can if you want to. You can also learn, if you want to fly as a hobbyist, the certification, the 107 certification is if you're going to make money. So if you're going to use this technology to help manage your farm, to make decisions, then yes, you're making money off of it. But if you're just going to go out there as a hobbyist and fly with your grandchild or just fly for fun, you don't need it. You still need to register the aircraft, but you don't need the 107 as a hobbyist. So for right now, just to learn, you can fly as a hobbyist. And so, get it out, read the manual, and it'll tell you, use the DJI Go app or whatever aircraft it is. And once you download that, you turn on the aircraft, they will communicate with each other. And then you'll begin to see what it sees. and then you can get out in an open field away from trees and power lines and stuff. And DJI, the Phantom, is so easy. You know, if you ever, once you get it in the air, if you feel uncomfortable, just let go of the sticks and it stops.
That's if you have a good one.
If you have a good one.
Cheap one.
If you still got, yeah, you got a cheap one, you still got to get your thumbs working right, you know. And I didn't
You
grow
have
up.
to hold it to keep it airborne?
Not on the good ones.
Not on the good ones, you just let go and
Just sit there.
this has a GPS in it and it just does everything.
Okay.
So, you know, like I grew up with a tricycle. I even had one of those because I'm not good at these gaming stuff. So it took me a little while to get my thumbs coordinated. There are flight software you can get, like, was it First Flight? I forgot what it's called. Anyway, the flight simulators.
Well, DJI has one on theirs that you can go to school or whatever. That's how I played with mine
Yeah.
before I took it out.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I mean, it's just like flying it.
Yeah.
And YouTube helps out a lot too.
Yeah, YouTube's great.
Yes. My boss
I
just
work
gave
on
me
cars
that.
a lot. And I said, where did you, man, YouTube is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you press the clutch on a Jaguar or something, you know?
That's what, I didn't know how to read. That's how I learned how to do any of this before I got it out of the box was YouTube.
And then, once you learn how to put it in the air and run it, then your goal is to like download an app and then plug in a,
Yeah, if you want to get into mapping, then yeah, you'll just, there's like several, like Precision Flight has one, Drone Deploy has one, Ag Vault. A lot of people use Drone Deploy, and there's others. But
so like whenever you did the mapping, you used an app to do that, correct?
Correct. Mhm.
Yeah. And does it come with a camera? I mean,
yeah,
every
Most
drone
of them
comes
do.
with a camera.
most of them do.
What state are you in?
Texas.
Texas. We'll put, well, to hit you up with one of your extension guys. And
Okay.
get
Mo.
him help you hook up. What part of Texas? That's the big
Moway.
state. Where?
Moway.
You got me on that one.
He's the bug guy at
Oh.
A&M.
But where are you at? What?
Oh, well, I'm in Liberty County, in between Houston and Beaumont.
Okay.
Yeah. So you plug in an app, and then it gives you a mapping
Mhm.
of like, is that just across the board, like yield or?
Oh, no, no. I mean, this is just a
That's just a
a flight pattern. It's taking pictures.
Just does a flat
This thing's pretty big.
It just takes pictures and you put it in back in the DataMapper and it puts them all together and you can run a whatever algorithm, a NDVI or whatever you want.
What gives it the red and green?
That's the NDVI imagery.
So that's
NDVI.
yeah, that's the processing. All that's telling you how to fly it.
Yeah.
That gives you the flight path. So once you fly it and you've got all these hundreds or thousands of images, then you download it to the cloud or you have something on your laptop, and then that does the analytical processing and it produces what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Well, let me do step one first, and I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but talk to this gentleman here. He's from Texas, right?
Well, I'm a comic book rep, guys, projects in Texas.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Shake your hand up.